In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make a parametric design of a pencil holder with parameters for the width, height, depth, the pencil diameter, the clearance, and the number of pencils. And I'm going to show you how to create those variables and update them using parametric design in Fusion 360. What I have highlighted here is just a standard diameter of a pencil is 7.22 millimeters, colored pencil from Crayola. And we'll use that for our basis. A general good principle in Fusion to start a project is to hit Command S, save the project, give it a title. I'm going to title this Parametric Pencil Holder. All right. The first thing I typically do when making a parametric design is to create the parameters. You can create parameters under the Modify menu. Go to Modify, Change Parameters, and I'm going to create 6 user parameters that I can store initial values for and then update later. So the first one I'm going to store is width, and then height and depth. So the width. The width of my pencil holder needs to accommodate these 7.22 millimeter pencils initially. And I'm going to make a pencil holder that can hold at least 10 of these, which means I need it to be at least 72 millimeters. To start with, I'm going to start with a value of 100 for the width of my pencil holder, 100 millimeters. The depth is another parameter. Now, I need it to be at least 7.2 millimeters deep, going back that amount, but I'm going to go up to 10 millimeters to start. I can change these values later. And then the height is just the height of this slab of material. I'm going to make a thin slab of material that the pencils can slide through. So for height, I'm going to just enter a value of, let's say, 2 millimeters to start with. A thin material that the pencils can slide through. Now, I'm going to store the pencil diameter because maybe later I want to design this for other pencils. So to start off with, I'm going to do a pencil diameter, pencil underscore diameter. I'll use the actual value that I measured with a caliper of 7.22. And later I can update this if needed. And then finally, clearance, as well as the number of pencils. The clearance is a value that's going to tell me how much wiggle room my pencils have in the holder. Clearance. Now, if you're 3D printing, I would recommend using at least a 0.3 millimeter clearance for an application like this, where it doesn't need to be a super tight fit, but you just want it to fit. I would use at least 0.33 millimeters. So I'll use that as a starting point. And then finally, number of pencils. I'm going to be creating a pattern for this pencil holder, and I want my pattern to be able to update the number of pencils that it holds. So the number is a unitless expression. So the first thing I'm going to do is switch this to no units, because this is just going to be a counting number. And I'll call this num, as in number of pencils, num pencils. And initially, I want my pencil holder to hold 10 pencils. So I'll enter a value of 10. All right, these are all of the parameters that I'm going to use for my design. Now I'm ready to design my pencil holder. Again, it's a super simple one. It's just going to be a flat slab. I'm going to create a sketch on the bottom plane. And in that sketch, I'm going to make a 2-point rectangle starting from the origin. And rather than enter the actual values of the height and depth, I'm going to use those values that I stored. This measurement that you see is going to be the depth that I specified. So I type in depth. I hit tab, and now I'm going to specify the width. So this was the width that I calculated for my initial 10 pencil holder. So these values are determined by those parameters. I can update them later if needed. Next, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create my circles in here as well. And a couple things I'm going to do. So first of all, my circle, all right, I'm going to give it the diameter of the pencil. So I called this pencil diameter. And I'm going to add in the clearance. So I'm going to say not only the pencil diameter, but I'm going to say pencil diameter plus the clearance value to add in that additional buffer for the wiggle room. Now, if I want this roughly in the right location, I could just drag it and drop it. If I want it in exactly the right location, I could actually place it by using a dimension tool. Hit D for dimension. If I go from this line to the center, I can calculate this value. Now, I know that the width is 10, or the depth, I should say. So if this value is depth divided by 2, that's going to place that circle in the exact center of the rectangle. And let's say I want to choose an exact starting location. I could also do the same thing, this distance from here to here. And let's just use, I'll just use the depth divided by 2 again. All right, this locates that in a specific place near the edge. All right, I'm going to leave this for now because I'm going to try to pattern the hole later. All right, first thing, I'm going to extrude this. Rather than extrude it at a specific value, I'm going to use the parameter that I stored called height. This is a thin holder, just 2 millimeters thick. I'm just trying to create something that the pencils will slide through, and then I would stack that up. Now my sketch went away, which is normal after you extrude something. So if I want that sketch back, I have to re-enable its visibility. And I'm going to go ahead and select the sketch hole, hit E for extrude. I'm going to come up. If I want it to always go all the way through, rather than distance, I'll say go through all. And that cuts all the way through the hole. Now, in order to get that pattern, that repeated pattern of 10 instances of this extrusion, I'm going to try to create a pattern of this extrude feature. So create pattern, rectangular pattern. And I thought that those arrows would show up, but, oh, directions. All right. So here I say that I want this to go along this axis, and by default it's just going to enter a value of how many do you want. So rather than using a value, I'm going to use that parameter that I stored called num underscore pencils. All right, so this gives me my 10 pencils. Now I could either drag this out a certain distance, or I could calculate that value. If I wanted to calculate an exact amount, I could say num pencils times pencil diameter to give me the exact spacing with no gaps. If I wanted to add in some gaps, I could then add in some distance. I'll just say 4 times the clearance. All right, and that spaces it out a calculated value. If I am not happy with that, I'll go back to edit the feature. All right, and for this case, I'm just gonna, rather than use a parameter there, I'm gonna drag this out, the distance that I want. I want it to span. You know what I want it to do actually? I want it to go the width. I'm going to say width minus the diameter, pencil diameter. And then I'll just subtract, let's subtract 2 times the pencil diameter so that it goes within the border. All right, so this is just going to ensure that this goes all the way through. And now we have our pencil holder. So here's the beauty of using parameters for a design like this. Let's say instead of 10, I only want 5. All I need to do is go to change parameters, change this number from 10 to 5, hit OK, and there's our 5 that are spaced out. I want 6, enter a 6, and that updates automatically. And we can go up to 10. If we want this to be thicker than it is, all right, instead of 2, we want it to be 6 millimeters. We update the 6, and it grows in that dimension. And if we wanted more clearance, so let's say we try this out on the 3D printer or the X-Carve, and that's not enough clearance, we can easily update this value to, let's say, 1 millimeter, and our holes are going to grow in size by that amount of clearance. So this is what you're going to do. And in the end, you're going to create a document where you document how you recreated your own simple pencil holder. You'll include a screenshot of your own pencil holder. You're going to update at least these 2 values, pencil diameter and the clearance, plus 2 other variables of your choice. These parameters is what I'm referring to. Include a screenshot of your updated parameters. Describe the benefits of using parameters in your design. And then define this term. What is meant by parametric design software? All right, and that is your assignment.